Good morning and welcome to another great edition of Younger Life Live. I'm Rick Federici.
And I'm Mary Anthony.
Mary Anthony, great to see you. Great smile. How the heck are you today?
I'm doing great.
As you were running into the Younger Life Live radio TV studios, we'd like to thank our radio partner, AM 1420 WIMS, WIMSradio.com, and of course, YouTube.com, where you could stream this bad boy and you could see us visually. We're going to introduce our guests coming up in a matter of seconds, but I want to throw this out there because you saw Jill Pluta and you saw Stephanie Olson from Rittenhouse leaving us. We are doing a big event, which we're both a part of again, to help the seniors to raise money for some of the senior programs. Speaking of living younger longer. And that's cool. But man, the energy in the room, was it crazy or what?
Oh, they're always so much fun anyways. But yeah, speaking of younger longer, please, they're talking about senior dance, a senior ball. I love that. I love that idea and the whole concept.
Last year, I am not kidding you, I will just say the wiser years, folks, were blowing away the young people. We had line dances going for the Cupid Shuffle, for the Cha-Cha Slide, and they were just rocking it.
That's awesome.
So that's going to be a little bit later on this week. We've got a great week of programs here at Younger Life. Let's talk on a serious note, something that, again, that we're involved with for many years, Alzheimer's and the walks in our backyard.
Yes, please. I mean, speaking of senior issues, it doesn't always have to be seniors, and that's something that Sarah and I were just talking about out there. So Sarah, if you don't mind, could you introduce yourself and tell us about what you do a little bit?
Hi, absolutely. So my name is Sarah Milligan, and I am the social worker is actually my degree title. Care consultant is my official title. And I serve the Northwest Indiana region, providing programs, education, awareness, support. So that's a number of different things that we do, as well as tons of free support services that are individual to families, even meeting with families one-on-one that have a lot of questions, concerns about maybe their own situation. So I pretty much do as little or as much as is necessary in our 7-county area here in Northwest.
7.
That's
she
incredible.
goes to 7 counties.
Keeps her young. Look at her. She's smiling. She likes her gig.
It's crazy. It's incredible. And, just chatting with her out here before the show, just hearing some of the things that she does is incredible, especially when we're talking about these free services that so many people don't even realize are available. It's just
that's the biggest issue. I was telling her, our outreach is so important. We never get in front of enough people ever. I like to talk, which is helpful in my job because I can never do enough of it.
You're
turns
perfect
out.
for us.
I know it. I love it.
Well, there's someone else also that we want to bring on here to Younger Life Live today with Rick, Mary, and of course the crew. Let's go to our live Star VIP hotline this hour. Today's show, of course, sponsored by the LaPorte Hospital. Let's see who our guest of honor is. Who are you?
Is it me, Denise?
It's you, Denise. Good morning.
Oh, gosh. It's always hard to do these on the phone because it sounds like you guys are having so much fun. But I'm Denise Sexman. I'm the interim program director for the Alzheimer's Association. I've been here about 8 years and can't say enough good things about Sarah up in Northwest Indiana.
She sounds pretty amazing. Just the things. I said she's kind of like this angel that goes, helps these people through this because it is so difficult. Can we talk a little bit about what Alzheimer's is? Can we start with the basics? Can you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Sure. Denise, you want to do that or me?
Go for it, Sarah.
Go for it. Okay. All right. So Alzheimer's disease is a type or form of dementia. Okay. A lot of people ask that question. Well, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? Well, that's the issue. So Alzheimer's disease is a type. There are actually 170 different types of dementia. Okay.
Really?
Wow.
Now, we don't usually talk about all of them, but there's usually only a handful that we talk about or hear the most about. Alzheimer's disease accounts for 60 to 80% of the cases, over the age of 65. So that is why it is the most common. That's one of the ones that we're most familiar with. So Alzheimer's disease is a form of dementia. It is a progressive disease that affects a person's ability cognitively, but it also affects mood. It affects all aspects of the person because ultimately it can affect all aspects of the brain. Okay. So just depending on the level of things. And so it is fatal. So it is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States.
I didn't even realize that.
I did when I was reading about it. I kept thinking in something I asked Sarah, I read that and I was shocked by that and kept thinking, I don't really understand, it's not as though it were a cancer. I didn't realize how debilitating it is to the brain, which then obviously in turn affects all the functions. Can you explain that a little? I was shocked. It's the sixth leading cause of death. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
Right. So symptoms develop pretty gradually over time, and they can vary a lot from person to person. Okay. So there's no one size fits all with this either. Okay. So as it progresses, obviously, then it affects more aspects of the person depending on how it's presenting. The reason it's the sixth leading cause of death is, and we get questions, people do not believe it's a fatal disease, is because ultimately it does affect the very basic functions of the brain. So that's the ones people know in the brain stem that you hear about, that affects your ability to swallow, affects your ability to breathe, to move. It affects those things in the later stages of the disease. So that's why it's fatal, because it does ultimately cause those functions to stop working. So
I would love to hear Janice's perspective too. If you want to, please chime in. I would love to hear what your thoughts are and add please to what we're chatting about so far.
And certainly, and I think this is it's a tough disease process in itself overall, because it's often a very long disease process. And when we talk about life expectancy, it can be anywhere from 2 to 20 years. But that also it's also affected by other health problems that person may have. If they've got cardiac issues or they've got something else going on that may exacerbate the disease process. But I heard somebody say the other day, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So when you start this disease, it's really important to get that support as soon as possible so that the caregivers are prepared for this, because it is a long haul. It's a long process, and we want those folks to be as supported as possible throughout the entire journey.
It's got to be tough. I want to throw this out there too, and we can expand on this as we roll through the next hour here on Younger Life Live, brought to you today by the LaPorte Hospital. When you look at this, not only does it affect those that get it or, have it, but truly I've seen it firsthand, and that's why we're so involved as a radio station, Gerard Media LLC, and all of us in the room and on the phone, is because it truly affects the families. And you have to, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody here, the experts, you have to understand it, wrap your arms around it, take a step back, and educate. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And that's another reason why we do so much about early detection on a number of levels. Yes, early detection, because it's very, very important for the person with the disease to get all the potential things available to them and all the resources for the person with disease, but also for the family. So it is two sides of the coin, that the earlier that someone may know that this is an issue for them, the earlier that so many of those things can happen, and they can be linked into resources, even if it's not stuff they need now, but things that they know they may need later, and making sure, as I like to say, they have plenty of tools in their toolbox. That's what I tell so many families. That's my job, is to make sure I give you as many things to reach for as possible.
Could you both share with us the, as far as early detection and stuff, what are some things that we should be maybe picking up on as families to notice in our loved ones that may kind of be a red flag? I mean, the typical things that we're all going to think of, I know I would say, forgetfulness or something, but what else can we be watching for that we could say, maybe it's time to, I don't know, do we call the doctor at that point, or do we look you guys up online? I mean, what would be the first step after you notice some of these symptoms?
Sure. Denise, you want to go on that one?
Sure. And I think that's the good point, is I think people really do associate this with memory problems.
Yes.
And those are the things that oftentimes we see first. You may notice that somebody repeats themselves a lot or asks the same question a lot, or they just can't remember familiar things that they used to remember. But it's a disease process that's a lot more than memory, and that's where the other pieces fall into place. It's problem solving. People may not be able to manage their checkbook anymore, or they may have problems paying their bills. Or, I had a client once who was a floral arranger, and she just couldn't figure that out anymore. Aww. Something that was very familiar and easy for her became really, really difficult for her. People get really confused about time and place. They getting lost in the car, or being unfamiliar when in a familiar place is often one of those things. And people often have trouble with visual spatial relationships. They may start having depth perception problems, and also word finding. I think sometimes that's a big one. And we all do that, right? We all are like, oh, what's that word? I'm looking for that word. But when it becomes a bigger problem and it seems to be happening a lot, those are things that we really need to think about. And it's always the general misplacing things.
Yeah.
Again, something we all do that occasionally, but usually the difference is we can remember where we eventually remember where we put it. And what happens to somebody with this disease process is they may not remember where they put it, or they may have put it in such a weird place. In Indianapolis, we used to have a walk to end Alzheimer's team that they called themselves the glasses in the freezer, because that's where her dad always put his glasses.
Oh.
Wow.
They would
So,
always find his eyeglasses in the freezer.
I mean, to me, I understand why it would be a while before someone actually is diagnosed then, because so many of these things are such vague.
Seem normal though too to a lot of us.
Well, they're so vague.
Right. And people don't. And so what I tend to remind people, because when I give our Know the 10 Signs program, yes, you can watch people when I'm talking going, oh gosh, and they're making faces and things like that, because they say, oh, well, I do that. Well, so do I. I mean, because obviously we know there's stress or lack of sleep, or in my case, a 3-year-old, things that can really affect,
distractions,
many affect your brain. But by definition, the difference with these is if these symptoms are happening to the point that they are interfering with someone's ability to do their day-to-day things, to do their usual routines and activities.
Great point.
That's the difference.
That's the that's the big difference.
So at that point, would you both recommend you call your, say it is a parent, it's your mother. Would you recommend that you call your mother's physician and say, I think we need to address this? Or do you...
we have a concern, we have a problem. That's a great...
Who do we go to at that point?
So we definitely always say the first place is starting with a physician. So whatever physician that may be, some people see their family physician the most. Maybe some people have a specialist they see more than their family physician, whatever makes sense for them. And especially if they haven't been for a while. A lot of times that's our first question is, when did you have a physical last? And you get all kinds of fun answers to that one. Sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's 10 years.
Or more.
or never.
Yeah.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, so that's usually the first stop, to make sure that there are just some basic things that are checked out, because there are also many, many things that can affect the brain and make it look like it's a dementia when in fact it's not.
I would imagine blood sugar, blood pressure, like some of those symptoms could be something chemically off.
Thyroid problems, infection, depression, untreated or undertreated mood problems.
Really?
I have a question. Dave from Hammond's listening to us right now on the live stream on WIMSradio.com. Please ask the ladies, my father has a ton of Post-it notes all over the house.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I saw, I'm looking at faces and I'm listening. Okay, so expand you ladies on this, please. Because is that a sign?
So it can be from an over-reliance standpoint. Denise, what do you think?
Well, and it may be something simple, but he's certainly compensating for some memory loss on his own, and it may be working just fine, and it may be that it's not progressing beyond that point, and it's kind of one of those tricky things. If the Post-it notes are working, that's awesome, but there may come a point when those Post-it notes don't do their job anymore. So it's certainly worth going back to Dad and saying, are you noticing memory problems in yourself, Dad? Is that why you're doing the Post-it notes? I think that's a great way to open the conversation up with Dad, to say, what do you think's going on?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I have a question. I know last Wednesday was World Alzheimer's Day. So can you tell us, first of all, when I was just doing some research for the show, just reading up, I read that, and it made me kind of curious to know, what exactly does that mean? Why is it a designated day? Is there something specific that happens on that day? And how many years has this been a designated World Alzheimer's Day?
So it's every year on September 21st.
Right.
So whenever that falls, and that's really when it's meant to be more of a global focus and increased awareness on the disease, Alzheimer's disease, as well as other dementias. As I mentioned, there's other types as well. It's been around since 1994.
Really? Okay.
So, and I imagine that it's probably picked up speed probably more recently because there's actually more awareness in general, but I think it also serves because so many of the efforts behind Alzheimer's disease, including the research and everything we're doing, is actually global as well. So it makes sense that we have a day that actually focuses on it globally also.
Right. That does make sense. And I'm just curious if that's why this time of year is the time. I know today we're going to be talking about the Walk to End Alzheimer's, an event that at least in our county, is coming up, and I know in Lake County was just this past weekend.
Yes.
So I'm curious to know, is that why this time of year is designated for the walk?
Denise, you can.
That's a really good question.
I'm just curious. Or is it more just weather related?
Dun, 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 Stumper.
I've never really made that connection before. Isn't that awful? I've been here 8 years and I've never really associated that. But I think you've probably answered a question that maybe I've had. So yeah, we do 12 walks across the state here in Indiana, and so they start that weekend after Labor Day and run until the middle of October. So I assume that it is about that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's magical when you see these walks going on and being a part of the one in Michigan City and even Crown Point through the years. You see these families, you hear these great stories, you see tears of joy, tears of just uniqueness in memory of. What do you ladies think when you're doing these? Obviously, you just got through Lake County, and I know Denise as well with plenty of.
And I will tell you, so last year was the first year that I was on the staff side of things. I had participated in other parts of the state prior to that from a clinical side of things, but being on the staff side of it and seeing in larger numbers, all in one place, all of the people that have either lost someone or they're currently dealing with it as a family, and also the ways that people come together, to actually feel that they're doing something against a disease that makes them feel so powerless because it takes so much away. And I am so moved also by the families and the fundraising that they do when it may have been a hardship for them to do what they did, but I had this family that I served recently and I didn't feel like I did that much, but they brought in over $2,200 as a family.
Incredible.
In honor of their mother who is currently fighting this disease. And I am telling you, and I'm typically a little emotional anyway, but
we all are.
It is just, and to see everyone together and to have that moment together, I actually don't describe it properly. I don't do it justice by any means. I don't think so. And the same is true. And Michigan City too is special because of the setting. It adds this special, we're the only one that last year were able to take pictures sticking our little flowers that everyone has in the sand and taking really cool pictures of the water.
Absolutely.
And so we have this unique opportunity here in Northwest Indiana that nobody else has anywhere else in the state. So
Speaking of the other side of the state, I would love to know, Denise, on your side, is there a story or is there something that hits home or touches your heart? I'm sure your line of work, you ladies, and what you do is incredible, but is there something that sticks out in your mind, Denise?
Well, and thankfully, I think from the Indianapolis office, I've participated in a bunch of different walks, and that's one of the fun things for me is going to these different areas to see, not just the Indy walk, but the other walks. But Sarah hit it on the head. I think one of the things that I always am in awe of is we always give people these little flower pinwheels, and to see the masses of people, a couple of hundred people walking around with those flowers, blowing in the wind, it's just awe-inspiring, and it gives me meaning to what I do. Those are the people that I do what I do for those folks, and it's always powerful for me when they feel like they want to give back to us. It's just an overwhelming feeling, and it's one of my favorite times of the year. It's a busy time of the year, but these 6 weeks are just they're just a blast.
Well, and I think Denise will share with me, that I always feel sometimes we never feel like we can do enough sometimes for the people we serve. And so I think that's another reason why we're so inspired by what they do to give back and to try to fight against this disease, because we feel powerless too,
It's motivation. It's motivation on some level.
And so to be able to, share that.
This is a little bit of a personal question, but have either one of you dealt with this in your own families? I feel like most families on some level have dealt with some form of dementia on some level, in grandparents and elderly aunts and uncles and stuff like that. But, have you always been moved by this? I guess is really more my question. Has it affected your family life?
So mine has actually been through more friends, neighbors of our family. I've been fortunate enough it hasn't been in my immediate family, but my entire family is in healthcare. And so I was going to end up somewhat close to older adults in healthcare. I was just going to happen. I spent a lot of time as a kid around a lot of different settings and around just a lot of older adults. Not that they all had dementia, but so I actually just have leaned toward geriatrics pediatrics my whole life, and then ended up falling into serving those also dealing with memory loss and related diseases, mainly because some of the work I did in Indianapolis with some really great geriatricians that sort of led me down a path. And so, sometimes you just never know why you fall in the niche you do, but
I'm always fascinated by that, though. That's always
I
ask that to everyone. I'm always fascinated what got you there, because it typically always is you never planned that. It just kind of always happens, and I always wonder how.
And I think when you look back, sometimes you can see how certain things maybe drove you one way or the other.
Influenced that.
And I think in general, for me, it's just something that is underserved, underrecognized. And from the
How many years of school did we put through? Did you have to go through? To get to this?
That would be post high school, so bachelor's degree, and then master's would have been 6.
Wow, Denise, what about you? Can you jump on that question by Mary?
How you got there? That's right.
So I too, like Sarah, have been in healthcare since I graduated with my master's many moons ago. And every job I've had, I've kind of, it's just kind of come at the right time in my life. I've just been very, very fortunate in that way. And I did hospice care for 10 years before I did this job. And it was one of these things where I have a grandmother who died probably about 4 years ago of vascular dementia. And we were just really lucky that she was in a good setting and actually she lived to be 96.
Wow.
So for having vascular dementia, she actually did really well. And I think she did really well because she was in a really good environment. She was in a good assisted living, and they took great care of her, and she thrived there, actually.
That's fantastic.
So that was a big part of it. But, this was one of those things that kind of just happened to me. We had been living in Maryland. We moved back to Indiana. I was looking for a job that I could still do home visits, because that's something that's really, really important to me. I sent my resume in for this job. It was a different job that was offered with the agency, and the person who I replaced sent her resignation in the day they got my resume, and they hired me. And I still joke to them that this time is that they hired me because I could start immediately. I didn't have to give notice to anybody. I could just walk in the door and start working, and I've been here 8 years.
Wow.
So it's become a passion of mine, and I love the people that I work with. I love the clients that I serve, and I feel like it's an underserved disease process. It's not one of those that, it's not sexy by any means, and so it's become a big passion of mine because the issues for these families are so significant, and the little bit that either Sarah or I or our other staff can do makes a huge impact on those folks.
For sure. I read that 5.4 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's, and that's enormous.
It is, and I actually think it could be underrepresented because that's assuming that's documented, I'm sure.
Right, I'm assuming, that's what I assume
and
too.
diagnosed properly.
Diagnosed,
yes.
And there's probably so many people that are not diagnosed. Do you know how many people in LaPorte County?
Unfortunately, we don't. We do not have county-specific data, but we do know. So statewide, it's over 110,000 Hoosiers.
Wow.
So in the state,
That's
and
a
again,
huge number.
Probably though low. I mean, in my opinion,
Right.
based on how I feel we're doing sometimes with getting the right diagnoses. So and caregiver-wise, I mean, which again, not everybody identifies as a caregiver. We're talking 334,000 people statewide that are caregivers, but of course that could also be underrepresented.
Wow.
So
Wow.
And I think those caregivers, it's also, it's families, but it's also, it's amazing to me sometimes we run across neighbors who are helping with care, or it becomes sometimes the village process. It takes a lot of people to help out in this process.
for sure.
When you were involved with, your grandmom and in the process itself, was it difficult for you? Did you have to, as I mentioned earlier, educate yourself? Obviously, you're in the field, but then educate your family and folks that surrounded you as different parts of it evolved. In other words, step 1, step 2, you could see things happening to truly understand it, to stay focused, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that go through this that just, I don't want to use the word give up, but just give up or kind of move in a different direction because they don't understand it or just don't want to understand it.
Or sometimes what happens is they blame the person for what's going on with them, and it's a medical problem. It's not a fixable problem. But with my grandmother, I spent a lot of time coaching my mom because she was the one that was the power of attorney and kind of doing a lot of the day-to-day things. And it's always negotiating that relationship when you're a professional and a granddaughter is sometimes kind of difficult. But I spent a lot of time coaching her, and in some ways with my grandmother, I was able to enjoy my grandmother as my grandmother because I wasn't her direct caregiver, but I was a big support to my mom, which I think was a big help and made a big difference for
necessary.
her. And she and I have had many conversations about lessons learned and how best to have navigated that. And I think she's very appreciative of the fact that we were able to do that. And one of my best stories is my niece and my mom and I, because my grandmother was in Tennessee, so the four of us went down. It was about a year before she died, actually, and we spent the whole weekend with her, and, we cleaned out. My grandmother tended to hoard napkins, so we would find napkins in all of her drawers, and so we went through all of her clothes and cleaned out all the napkins and returned a bunch of silverware to the kitchen and did some stuff like that. But we really were able to sit down and share stories. First, we found all these pictures of my grandmother's brother who had been shot down over Italy in World War II.
Wow.
And she started telling us all these stories about him because her old memories were still good. Her current memories weren't very good, but those old memories were still there. And my mom said to me later, I've never heard those stories before. And it was a really special time to be able to have all of us there together and hear these stories because I had never heard them. And for my niece, who at the time was 24 or something, that was a big impact because she was meeting my grandmother in a very different place than she'd ever had before. So it was finding those special moments is amazing, but it sometimes can be hard. Those are hard to find sometimes.
Well, and trying to help people figure out how to have a chance to have some time with their loved one that isn't task oriented.
Yeah.
A lot of the discussions we have with families is around care planning. How do we get you some respite? Research says you must have respite. The whole no man is an island thing is really, really true in this scenario. I mean, people do it, but eventually something implodes if they don't have some kind of support or something. So, and that's what I tell people when they're struggling maybe with allowing. A lot of spouses struggle sometimes with allowing someone else because they feel it needs to be them. But letting them know, we want you to be able to have some quality as opposed to just this constant trying to accomplish all these things. And so sometimes it's just even those conversations of resources, what might be an option, informal, formal, all of those things to help with that.
I want to throw this out there, ladies. Here's a great text message to Younger Life Live, brought to you today by the LaPorte Hospital. The information you receive for the caregiver through this organization is wonderful. I helped take care of my mom, and without it, I would have not had the mental and physical health to handle it. Wow. Wonderful text message right here
I'm so glad.
on Younger Life.
Oh, we have served. I was telling her, sometimes I feel like I don't have enough opportunities to come out into this area for the awareness piece, but I cannot tell you how many families I have served individually through home visits, both in Michigan City and LaPorte. Lots of them. And so that's why I know there are so many families in need, and it's just trying to get to all of them that we need to do.
Yeah.
So, but that's
what I'm saying. This has got to make you ladies feel awesome.
Oh, I'm so glad. So glad to hear that.
Fantastic. Can we talk about kind of treatment course? So first of all, is there a cure?
So there is not,
right.
Unfortunately. And there's a lot of confusion around the drugs that are actually on the market. And those are the ones that people have heard of sometimes, Aricept, Exelon, Namenda. And those medications, the goal for them is symptom management. That's how they work. They do not slow the progression of the disease, okay? But they almost appear to in some cases if they work well because they can help the person feel a little bit better. So then in a sense, it almost appears as if it's slowing it down. And so the hard part is sometimes though they can be helping and there's not an outward sign in the person that they're better. And that's hard for people because, okay, most of the medicines we take in the world, we somehow know they're working.
Right.
Either an infection goes away or we feel better or our mood's better or whatever. That's not always the case with these drugs. And so a lot of families will say, oh, she tried that for a month and it didn't do anything. And then my next question is always, well, how did the doctor explain that medicine to you? What were you told? What was your expectation? And generally it was because they didn't notice a difference, but sometimes when they took the medicine away, the person was worse. Sometimes, not always. They only work in half of the people. It's about 50-50. And that's assuming that there aren't, some people do have side effects, some worse than others. That's another issue. So it's a tough thing. So they help, they can be helpful, but not helpful enough, unfortunately. So, we've got a lot of really great stuff we're hoping is going to come up on the horizon here, but we're waiting.
Denise, what do you want to add to that too? Because obviously you're all over the state and all over the country for that matter.
Well, and I think that the key to this is research, right? We can't get a cure without good research, and it's hard to find good research participants for these. Sarah's right. There's a lot of things in the pipeline, and there's a lot of hope in the pipeline, and that's what we want to keep there, right? Our goal is, our mission is to find a cure for this, and we are the second largest funder of research in the United States.
Wow.
And that's behind the federal government.
Wow.
So we have a big impact and can actually, on some level, direct those funding streams faster than the federal government can, because we don't have to go through some of the the red tape things that are there for a purpose, but we can do things a little bit more streamlined and a little bit faster. So that's one of the things from an agency standpoint that I'm pretty proud of us for, because that's the future of the disease. The only way we're going to find a cure is through the research that's going on.
Is that how the Walk to End Alzheimer's helps? Is that where the money goes for that? It's obviously a fundraiser.
So the money that's raised, part of that money goes to service the clients that we serve, and it stays in to do those programs and services and to support the programs that Sarah does. But a portion of that also goes to fund those research activities that are done more on a national level. But we also do all those statewide. The money kind of goes for those national programs that are research-based, but also stays statewide for the programs and services that we offer.
That's so important.
And we actually link people to research as well. The funding obviously is a key point, but we say all the time, we got to also have people in those trials. So we actually have what we call a trial match program that people can actually put in some basic demographic information, like create a real basic profile.
Sure.
And then it will actually potentially generate all of these different studies that people, it is not just drug trials. It is, they need a well person for a prevention study, or they need a caregiver for a quality of life study, or all these things that really make a difference on both ends of the spectrum, both prevention, finding a cure, as well as everybody in between. So I feel like we really do best of both worlds. We are making sure the funding goes where it needs to, but then we're also making sure more people know what's going on in research, understand a little bit about it, and can access it if they're interested.
Right. I think that's so important too. I think that's fantastic. You hear these little, you hear things all the time. If you do word searches, you read all these things. Like if you do word searches or crossword puzzles, or, constantly challenge your brain to some degree on a different level on a regular basis, it can help. I don't want to say prevent, because prevent's not really the proper word, but it can help
reduce risk.
Reduce your risk. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm trying to think. Arm you against possibly having some of these things happen. So these studies, I think that's fascinating. I didn't realize you could potentially sign up to
I
be
think
part
people
of
would
a study.
love more information on how to get is that on your website?
That is actually on the website. Go ahead, Denise.
It's on. If you go to the main alz.org, which is the national website, and I think there's probably a button on the front. The program is called Trial Match, and you can just click on in and go straight, to the profile. If you don't have web access and you want to create a profile with somebody on the phone, we've got staff who'll do the same thing. So you can call our helpline, 1-800-272-3900, and when you call that number, it'll say 1 for trial match, and it says 2 to talk to a helpline staff person. So you just hit the 1 button, and it'll go straight into somebody who can help you set that profile up and have a conversation with you about the trial match opportunities.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Can you tell us if Alzheimer's is hereditary?
So they know that that plays a role. Both genetics and hereditary can play a role to different degrees, depending. But it is not as genetic as many people think that it is. It is more familial. It can be familial.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So that means the more people in your family who have had the disease means your risk may be higher. But it's still not a given. There are even a couple of genes that they look at that they can test for.
Really?
But sometimes even that, yes, it means your risk may be higher if you have it, but it's still not 100%. So what do you do with that information? So there's still a lot of issues as far as whether that's even a good idea to do that kind of testing. Denise, I know you probably have about this as well.
Well, and there are, it's more common for it to be genetic in the folks that are diagnosed under 65.
Okay.
So the folks that are considered, what we consider younger onset Alzheimer's disease. But most of those families are already known. So, people get really nervous when they're diagnosed. Yeah, I don't blame them. I'd be nervous, too, if I was diagnosed in my 50s.
Right.
But those families, a lot of those genetic families, the scientists and the research people already kind of know about those people.
Really?
So people ask us those questions all the time because they want to get those genes tested. And I always, just like Sarah said, what are you going to do with that information? If all it tells you is you've got an increased risk,
why borrow trouble?
It would freak me out.
You have to really decide if you want to know that or not.
Why borrow the trouble?
Right.
I mean, honestly, I'm an absolute believer in that. I understand being prepared, but I also think you're causing yourself and your entire family a lot more stress than you may possibly not get it.
I'm curious on both of you ladies, if what would be the youngest age that you guys have seen? Because that's what I'm going to be 50. So it's like, I look at this and I'm like, I still think it's young and I act like a kid and I love life. But I'm thinking to myself, man, to me, right around the corner, 60 is young, 70 is young.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like,
Denise, I'm not, because I'm wondering if we're thinking of the same people.
I know we're thinking about the same person.
Well,
you can go for it.
Okay. Well, so technically, we've dealt with a family, and it was not thought to be an Alzheimer's type of dementia. It was thought to be something called Lewy body or dementia with Lewy bodies.
and what's that? Can you explain
So that is a form of dementia that presents a little differently than Alzheimer's disease. Typically, there's a lot of hallucinations and delusions. They have some physical symptoms in how they walk and how they look that look like Parkinson's, and they can fluctuate. So they can look very okay and seem very okay and compensate really well sometimes, but be very, very bad other times. So it's difficult to diagnose. There is a family in the region who lost their 21-year-old son.
Oh my
25.
25? I thought he was 21.
He was diagnosed at like 19.
Is that what it was? Yeah. So we both dealt with, because they go back with the association. How far back, Denise?
Since like 2010, I think.
Right. And unfortunately, then she also has a daughter who they believe is also dealing with the disease. So there's a lot of questions in this scenario. They've also been linked. They've been linked to lots of sources, research, talked with Mayo, Indianapolis, right? They were down there.
Yeah.
So we've worked to try to also link them to a variety of things to kind of take a look at this. So
to find out.
So
but I will say that's an extreme.
It is an extreme.
And it's horrible. It's doubly sad, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I think from an I hate to use the word older person, probably the youngest person I've come in contact with was diagnosed at 49.
Right.
Wow.
With a true Alzheimer's disease.
So it can still be, unfortunately, young.
That's so young.
Typically, though, you said 65 and older.
That's your most common. I mean, the younger
the-
onset is anywhere, it's 5 to 10%, I believe, of cases. Is that right,
it's
Denise?
pretty rare.
Yeah, of the younger. So we do want to be clear about that. And typically those individuals also have to go through some different channels to even get diagnosed, because sometimes the docs have a hard time really wrapping their head around that that's even a possibility. So sometimes what we provide for those families is a little bit different. They end up at a lot of the specialty centers, Chicago, Indianapolis, that kind of thing. But the most common form is, yes, over the age of 65. And then as someone ages, their risk increases. So 1 in 3 people over the age of 85 have dementia.
Some form.
So it's a risk factor, not a guarantee by any means at all, but it is a risk factor, aging.
Well, this is quite
I was
heavy.
going to say, it just
Sorry,
blows you away.
I know.
No, but it's, you know what?
It's so necessary.
I didn't even realize, even right off the top, like the first minute into the show, you're like 170 different, variations. I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, in a lot of us that have been involved, I think of it in different ways, and you are there to help on whatever level you can. But Wow.
Well, I think that's why it's so important that we discuss the walk to end Alzheimer's. At least it's something
Absolutely.
proactive that we feel like we
Absolutely.
can do to help out. Can you tell us about our local LaPorte County walk that's coming up?
So it is an awesome event, and I have to say, so because I'm not from Northwest Indiana, anytime I'm by the lake, I just think I'm in heaven.
Isn't
because
that
I'm,
great?
you know, so
It's beautiful.
So then I'm a little extra excited most of the time about it because of the venue. But it really is awesome. It's growing every year. It is, and it's also not an early walk, so you don't have to be up with the roosters if you're not a morning person. So
That's nice.
because the walk itself actually doesn't start till 1:45.
Oh my,
so,
wow.
The ceremony and the walk starts about 1:45 in the afternoon. So registration opens at 12:30. Sometimes people come a little bit before that, but that's fine too. So we're usually set up and ready to go.
With their teams.
Yes, and the
I
teams
love it. The shirts,
can
the
be
teams,
so
the people. It's
creative.
like, woo!
Oh, last year somebody had this hilarious bulldog, and it was in a purple tutu.
See?
It was the cutest thing I've ever seen.
That
And
is
I'm
so-
a dog
that's great.
person, but
so cute.
so they're really creative, and sometimes how they'll make their own T-shirts, even though they get a T-shirt if they raise $100, each $100 they can get a T-shirt or per number of participants. But they do their own things and
Awesome.
the names. And so
Do people have to pre-register?
we have some that come and register the day of.
Okay.
Obviously, it's going to save them some time if they do pre-register because they might not have to wait a little bit through the line to do that. And that's either via the website, which is the alz.org, or they can even call the helpline and register. That's the 1-800-272-3900. And I do want to mention that helpline for any purpose is 24 hours a day, every day
Wow.
of the year.
That's awesome.
Any purpose.
I
So
want to throw
whether-
this out there too, because Washington Park in Michigan City,
Correct.
Indiana,
Sorry.
is the place. And so as you come off, whether it's 94 or 12 or 20, very easy to get to, or even 94 at 421, go towards the lake. And when it dead ends right around the library, you're there.
And we're set
Yeah.
up at that nice new little.
Isn't that beautiful pavilion?
Oh, last year was the first year we had
Yes.
it, and
Gorgeous.
with our stage and nice restroom. I mean, it is absolutely. It just added a little extra something. I
A
tell you.
lot of people
Okay.
too, Mary, they bring family, friends, and even the businesses that do it to help on a number of levels will have their picnics right
Yes.
there because
Oh,
it's right
certainly.
across the street from the zoo.
Yep.
And it's just
They
great.
make a day of it. We
Yeah.
also tell people, it's also okay if you can't actually do an entire walk. I mean,
Is it a
yes,
5K?
They do. It is not. It's a 1 mile or a 3 mile option
Oh, okay.
typically. But even sometimes people just come to be a part of it and they
Absolutely.
don't actually walk. Sometimes if people are able to bring their family members, sometimes they're in a wheelchair, but they still bring them anyway to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So it's really people of all types, all abilities, all everything essentially that actually come to this. And there's not actually a fee to walk. So really people can choose to donate. Obviously that's up to them. But I think that also opens it up for people to also participate in join, as they wish, as they desire. So it's just really it's a fun event, but it's laid back too, which I always like.
We preach here, Mary and I, on Younger Life Live, about the importance in a family structure to teach your children, your grandchildren. A lot of us were raised in middle-class families that we were always a part of making a difference campaigns. So we know that, we live that, we have passed that on to our children. But that's a great way too to show people in different generations how this works because they are the future.
Absolutely. And the other great thing is we also have opportunities for people if they don't know about the programs and services. So we have tons of material out. They can go
that's
ahead and
nice.
get the info on Trial Match if they haven't already, and they can
Yep.
even fill
They
out
can
their
even sign
card.
up.
They can
That's
fill out their
nice.
card
Wow.
to get the information. We have opportunities for them to sign up from an advocacy standpoint because we know that's very important, keeping our legislators both locally and on a federal level aware that this needs to stay top of list for what we're looking at from a funding perspective and from a care and support perspective. So we have opportunities for people to actually sign up to be advocates as well. You do those email blasts sometimes for
Sure.
certain things going on.
Yeah.
We like those. So it's also a way to further engage as well as participate in the walk by attending.
Again, being proactive. I mean, absolutely. It's important to keep it in the front of the line here. Keep the funding coming and the research going so we can hopefully find at least, even if not a cure, more manageable treatment course rather than
Right.
just,
And more services.
I love the
Yes,
trial
the
thing.
service-
I
think
love this trial
that's
piece.
fantastic. How long has the walk been going on, at least in LaPorte County? Do you know?
Denise, do you know the
you-
LaPorte?
I think the Michigan City Walk is new for us, and I
Oh,
was
okay.
trying to think of maybe 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
it's
Oh, wow,
been up
okay.
there, but I think it's been growing. And again, the venue, that venue, it's one of the walks I love to do because that park is phenomenal. I mean, it's just one of the most beautiful places I've ever been.
Yeah, fantastic.
And the walks in general go back to, so 93 was the first Indy walk.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Right. And I mean,
And so we've added,
gosh, it's
we've
up to
added
12.
up. And so, but
so,
I think the Michigan City Walk is fairly new to us, so maybe 4 years.
I think it's great.
By the way,
That's
93 and what? 93 to 03, that 20, ladies are going like 23 years there in Indy. But no, around this area too, it has been a while. And Crown Point this past weekend, I know last year, and I was reading all that stuff, it was at least 1,600 people. And this year had to be, you always get a lot of people.
Right. And it was really, and sometimes it's so hard to gauge, and because they're all moving around a lot.
Sure,
So,
sure.
it's, a lot of times we try to kind of, as we're visualizing, try to see what we think. And I definitely don't have any of the current numbers, but definitely was very well attended. The weather cooperated, even though it was actually a little warm, which is
hot,
unusual
yeah.
for us up here.
Sure.
But it also helped, I think, with people being able to come out that day, even the day of if they weren't planning on it, because the sun was shining. Come on.
Yep. Puts a smile on your face.
So I think we were really happy with this success. And this was our second year at the Lake County Fairgrounds, actually, because it was moved there last year because we had outgrown Hidden Lake Park in Maryville.
That's a good thing.
And so it has made that venue has made everything so much more smooth, and everybody was more comfortable. So really, we just keep getting the momentum going on that one. So that's why we're continuing to do so in this market as well. So
Denise, what would you say if you wanted to add something as we're coming to a wraps on the show in a couple minutes here? What would you like to throw out there, whether it's the knowledge, whether it's the education, why we should help? Talk about it, please.
Well, and I will also say I think the walk is one of the best awareness and fundraising and just overall great events that we have. But we've also got a caregiver symposium coming up in Maryville. So for those folks who are looking for a bigger education piece, we're doing this caregiver symposium on, what is that, October 20th in Maryville.
Wow.
So if you have more questions about that, you can call the 800 number and we'll get you connected to that. And just supporting Sarah. She's one of our rock stars up there, and we're happy to have her.
Yeah, she certainly sounds like it. It's incredible. It really is. The work that you guys do is amazing.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Please, when you're in town, come and visit the Younger Life Live studios in WIMS. We would love to see you. And on the symposium note, Mary and I have guests on every single day. Even if it's for 5-10 minutes, please feel free before the 20th. You ladies, if you want to chime back in, and Denise, you as well, please. We're all about helping make a difference here in our community, and you guys are doing a great job. So hats off to you both, your professionals and your team. But thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
All right. AM 1420, and of course, Younger Life Live. We're going to hold on to you for a few minutes.
I know we're wrapping up, but I'd
Yeah,
love
sure.
it if you tell us again, Sarah, the specifics for this weekend. The walk to end Alzheimer's is this Sunday the 1st, right?
absolutely, it's actually
Saturday.
Saturday.
Oh, Saturday the 1st. Sorry. Oh, my
It's
goodness.
okay. No, don't worry.
Things flow together. We all do it.
Time passes so
Yeah.
fast.
Yes.
Maybe I have it.
Yes, no. So it's Saturday the 1st. Okay. Registration begins at 12:30. And then the walk ceremony and the walk itself, 1:45 start. So if they do want to pre-register, obviously that actually takes care of a few things other than, if they're picking up other items. Otherwise, they can actually just come out the day of if they'd like and, join us in the event and the ceremony and
Washington.
all the fun. And it is fun, I promise. I
Yeah.
know it's a serious topic, but
It
it's
is.
really fun and lots of positive, hopeful energy, which is really, really important with this disease. So
Absolutely.
I would say
That's
you have to make it
fantastic.
fun to keep it flowing, and families, friends, people that are involved with it on other levels. You get it. Make it positive. Make a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah.
We do have alz.org
correct.
as the website.
and if they want to make it local quickly, if they're
Sure.
savvy with that, /Indiana,
Okay, cool.
Oh,
then that actually goes to the Indiana's portion of the site, where if they click on programs, the symposium info's on there as well. So that's also another option. They can get there from the national site as well,
Sure.
but a little easier if you just add the
Yeah.
/Indiana.
I'm all about easy.
Yeah.
I think it's so much information today, and I really hope that our listeners do that. If nothing else, if you have questions, go to the website.
The website, or please, that 24-hour helpline, it is there for a reason. And I say to people, even if you don't know what you need, that's fine. We will help you figure it out. They staff master's level social workers on shifts for people that if people come through that need a little more specialized support, information, whatever it is, we can take care of you. So
it's amazing.
Beautiful.
Yes.
1-800-272-3900.
Correct.
ALZ.org
Yep.
//
Yes.
Indiana. Thank you so much. You are wonderful. We love your energy and your smile. Thank you both for your time today, you and Denise.
Absolutely.
And, Mary and I, it's open door here at Younger Life Live. So
Love
thank
it.
you.
Thanks.
Again.
Thank you so much.
Before we wrap it up here, we got about a minute or so. I want to just chat about obviously tomorrow's show is going to be great. We got some teachers and some principals and some schools going head to head to be fit this week. We got some great stuff coming up.
We're talking about a few different things. We're talking to Family Advocates tomorrow, which is another great program locally that does a lot for our community. And then we're going to be talking about a competition going on between some of the school staff and some of the students, and which I think is fun. We're all about competition.
We are.
And we're talking about flu shots, which boo, but necessary.
I'll be a big smiler for this one. Mary and Rick next week, just to kind of looking towards the future. Little pickleball action.
Oh yeah, we're finally getting to do our
live.
pickleball game. We hear of pickleball and it's like a new thing.
Are you familiar with pickleball?
We haven't played.
A little, but
Yes.
that
We
sounds
really aren't, other than what we've been told. So we're going to try it.
awesome. That's awesome.
It'll be fun.
We have to be on the same team though, because we're very competitive.
We
Yes,
said we'll be
I'm
on
gonna
this-
have to be tuning in,
Really?
aren't I? Yeah.
Wait, we need someone to play.
Oh yeah, no, how fun.
Wait, I think
We
I
need
have
someone
something
to
going on
beat.
that day.
hear that?
Let's have an
We're outta here.
appointment. Yeah, no.
Oh, how funny. Well,
So that's
A lot
gonna
of
be
fun.
That's gonna be real fun. And I also want to throw out there too, as a part of the Family Advocates, we do have a special in-studio surprise jam with Chris Meadows, who's going to be performing out at the big superhero 5K run, which again is this weekend as well. There's a ton of stuff.
very busy
upcoming.
time of year. Very busy time of year. And I get so excited talking about these crazy events going on all over the place when they are for such good causes.
Absolutely
It
agree.
makes you want to do it. It's for a good cause. It's a lot of fun, and it is a great example for our children to learn too. So
Well, on behalf of us all at Younger Life Live, we thank the LaPorte Hospital for their wonderful sponsorship. Thanks to Sanders, our executive producer. I'm Rick Federici.
and I'm Mary Anthony. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Gentlemen.